Overwatch 2 is struggling. I'm sure this is of little surprise to anyone. Player numbers have remained stagnant for several years, with them only declining further since the release of Marvel Rivals. That said, the issues with Overwatch have been there for years. Marvel Rivals is not responsible for that. All it did was highlight that there's clearly an appetite for these games, and it provided people with a good alternative. This is not a purely negative video. I think Overwatch is a genuinely good game with a ton of potential. There's a great opportunity for growth right now, should Blizzard start making the changes people want. To start off, I want you to understand where I come from. I have played Overwatch casually, on and off over the years, mostly with my partner when we just want to chill and play some games. Almost all of my playtime has been spent in the Quickplay playlist, and I have only recently dipped my toes into the competitive aspect. Therefore, I do not wish to discuss the competitive playlist in this video, as I simply cannot give a well-informed opinion on that mode. Furthermore, I don't really keep up to date with the wider Overwatch discourse, so it's possible that some of my topics have been covered extensively already, and that some of my issues with the game are genuine non-issues for other players. This video is generally a reflection of my thoughts on the game and what I view as the main pain points from a more casual perspective. Before we get into all the negative stuff, I just want to highlight what I really love about the game. Overwatch is just so nice to look at. That classic Blizzard art style, great UI design with top tier system performance. The gameplay is smooth, outside of some really weird hitboxes, it all just feels snappy and well made. And it enables some really good skill expression. Well placed ultimates and god tier timing on saves can instantly turn the tide of a match, rewarding you for actually spending the time learning the game and how different heroes and mechanics interact with each other. And this is of course further backed up with just a great roster of characters that almost all feel unique, with each fulfilling some kind of class fantasy for every type of player. So these here are the main issues I believe the game currently faces. I may do another video in the future once I have more experience and perhaps shifted out of my casual playstyle. Overwatch 2 has had an uphill battle since it launched. Blizzard are no longer the industry darling, with numerous scandals and dramas over the years. General sentiment is very low across most of their franchises, except perhaps World of Warcraft in recent years, and it feels like everything is money driven instead of player driven these days. With that in mind, the recent release of Marvel Rivals has magnified the negative sentiment, especially with NetEase employing a player first emphasis on their marketing and design decisions. Now I know that Overwatch 2's PvE mode was going to be its main selling point. This is perhaps a hot take, but I honestly just don't see this having ever paid off for them. All the PvE content I have engaged with has honestly been average at best. It just feels like something that sounds good on paper, but it would not have added much value long term. Also, while we're at it, why on earth are the few PvE missions in the game still locked behind a paywall? There is absolutely no reason to buy this content. Game developers realised years ago that paid, player separating content was a terrible business strategy. It's just so random that one of the only things Overwatch 2 was supposed to do is literally separate paid content. I know the perception of content is a strange one. During the months I'm not playing Overwatch, I find myself always thinking, Overwatch just doesn't have enough content. So I recently took a look into it. Since February 2024, we have had seasons 9 through to 14. In that time, the game has added 3 new heroes, Venture, Juno and Hazard, 3 new maps, and between those, it basically works out as 1 map every 2 months on average. We've had several new events, including the recent Classic and 6v6 game modes, which honestly I thought were way better than Quickplay for me, a competitive rework, and just various timed events. Overall, it's not as bad as I thought, and they do have a nice cadence of alternating between new maps and heroes each season. I know recent talk about Rivals having a new character every 6 weeks is a hot topic, but my honest opinion is that Overwatch character design is significantly higher quality, and they are all relatively unique. I do believe that going for pure quantity will end up with issues long term, but what do I know, perhaps the new rival characters are all varied and interesting. Furthermore, the actual content in Overwatch 2 is mostly just maps and heroes for me. Checking up on this, we have 42 heroes in the roster, and 56 maps split between the various game modes, of which around 30 of those are ones I will see in my typical gameplay. There are also a ton of random modes and events that come and go, but these are honestly not really interesting to me. I'll jump in once or twice and generally not go back. I'm curious just how popular these events are and if they're really worth the dev time. I had this perception of a lack of content in the game, and I actually think it is just me being stuck in the mentality of Overwatch 1 and the content drought that plagued the game in its later years. I'm quite certain that many other people share this sentiment, and I genuinely don't know how Blizzard can fix this. So, toxicity is a staple of any modern online game, and I think Overwatch is no different in that regard. And while I've been fortunate enough in my playtime to have had very few toxic remarks directed at me, I have seen it happen to many other players. The frustrating part for me here is that it's often thrown at obviously new and struggling players. Let's quickly discuss the new player experience. You turn on Overwatch and you start the tutorial. You feel good, everything's nice and straightforward. Maybe you're one of those players that actually goes into the training tab, plays a few games against the AI, and you get a bit more of a feel for the game. And now it's time to move on and start playing Quickplay. What is this? The game has totally changed. You get destroyed. Crushed by all these random heroes and abilities you do not yet understand, and then just to top it all off, someone types in chat, they're not overly impressed with your performance. In fact, you suck, you cost us the game, GG. Overall, it's a pretty miserable experience. This leads me on to the next issue. Overwatch just really isn't that easy to get into these days. We have double the heroes of launch, and it's really hard to learn everything. This is further amplified by the existing player base being mostly veterans who've played for years. I will use my friend as a good example. Last week, he started up Overwatch for the first time since the original game released. To the game's credit, it locks you out of a majority of the heroes to start with, and you unlock them at a really good rate. You can play a couple of games, unlock a new hero, and try it out before you get another. After we did some warm-up games against the AI, he was keen to try Quickplay, so we went in. It was, as I described before, an absolute slaughter. In fact, I believe we lost every single game, and it really felt bad for all involved. Now this could be the skill-based matchmaking between him and myself just making the lobbies way harder, but either way, it was not a good experience and he quickly was set on just playing Soldier 76. This is an issue so many games have. It isn't unique to Overwatch, but I firmly believe that there should be some kind of new player lobbies to start out, or even just setting the skill-based matchmaking to a really low level for the first 10 games for example, even when partied. Sure, you might have smurf issues, but that seems so niche and minor compared to the overall experience a new player has in their first few hours. So now we're getting into my bigger issues. The first of which is the overall Quickplay experience. I'm not a great player, I would say maybe average. The Quickplay matchmaking system is absolutely atrocious. There is something really wrong with how teams are matched and it feels so artificial in how unrealistic it is. I can play 12 games and win 2. Those 10 games we lost are almost always a landslide loss. We have no chance of winning and it feels really bad. Alternatively, the 2 we win would be of the same outcome, it's just in the opposite direction. A couple of days later, I'll play again, 12 games, we win 10. All landslide victories, and it feels like the matchmaking has just decided, today we win, but tomorrow we will lose, and that is how it is. You dread playing the game again after a good day, because you know it's going to feel terrible the next time you do play. Now I know what you're going to say, just play competitive, it's fair there and you play with your skill level. And sure, that's a valid statement, but if you're a new player that is not one of the Overwatch 1 veterans, you need to complete 50 Quickplay matches before you can enter the competitive playlist. So long before getting this fair playing field, they are having a pretty tough time in Quickplay. Not only that, but you will spend a significantly longer time in the queue if you don't select all roles, or just play a tank. This blockade, for the more competitive minded players, could also be having a negative impact on retention. Of course, I understand not allowing new players to just roll in and ruin the competitive experience for others, it all makes perfect sense. My bigger issue is the non-competitive playlist being quite unpleasant. This brings me to a broader question. What is the average Overwatch player doing? I believe the majority of casual players are just chilling in Quickplay or the other game modes. In my opinion, the majority of players are not going to touch anything with the word competitive in it. It's a scary and serious mode, especially for new or casual players. Now I genuinely might be wrong here, it's possible competitive is way more popular than I thought, so please let me know in the comments. Either way, Quickplay is an issue and there's absolutely a better system for matchmaking. This is one of the only games I've ever played where it's genuinely so one-sided a majority of the time. The Quickplay playlist is what the average new or returning player is going to go into, and it's not a good experience. If this is what you encounter when you play Overwatch for the first time, it is not likely going to incentivize your return. I want to start off this section with the monetization and how it impacts the game as a whole. This is a free to play game, it has to make money and that's fine. You get a ton of content in this package, tons of heroes, maps, random modes, and a consistent content schedule. We all know the store is extremely expensive, and Mythic skins have only amplified this issue. The recent addition of Maximilian's Vault, which is possibly a timed event, adds old season skins back into the cash store at a discount. This is just more FOMO spending nonsense that I really don't like, but I'm sure some of the spending players will get value out of it. They are sporadically adding skins into the free currency part of the store. And these are fine, and I would love it if we could have a middle ground here, where all the skins would be added to this after say 6 months on the cash store. Then those who pay real cash can enjoy that exclusivity for a while before the average free-to-play player can eventually choose to buy those skins they really want but can't afford. And these players could never save enough points to buy everything anyway. I really appreciate that Battle Pass now gives you the cash currency back to the value of 60% of the past cost. So in total you end up paying around £4 for all the skins, prisms, emotes, etc, providing you complete it of course. They have also removed the new character releases being behind it, as well as that you can now choose to buy older season mythic skins if you missed them and aren't really interested in the current season ones. They also added in the stack and weekly challenges, making it way easier to progress if you come back to the game at a later point in the season. These are all huge improvements that honestly are just big W's. There isn't much to complain about with the Battle Pass, other than it's maybe a little bit too grindy to finish, especially if you just want to play for a little bit at the start of the season. One final point here is that I just want Battle Passes to be permanent once you've paid for them. Marvel Rivals has started implementing this system, and I really hope that Blizzard follows suit. So, strip away all that store stuff for now, and you have the daily player experience, in the sense of progression or the reason to log in. I know you could say, it's free, what more do you want? Surely just the fun of the game is enough. Yeah, that worked 10 years ago before live service games took off, and now all these different games are fighting for all of your time. I know that competitive has the point system, where you can get unique shaders for the weapons, and that's really cool, but it is uniquely for the competitive modes. For those who just want to jump in and play every day, outside of the Battle Pass and the titles after it, a majority of which I just don't really care about, it's pretty hollow. Perhaps I'm being greedy. It just feels that there could be way more drip-fed free stuff that incentivizes longer term engagement with the game. So that's where I have a thought. I'm feeding back into the Overwatch 1 loop of loot box rewards. No, that doesn't mean bring back loot boxes, let's just keep that dead and gone please. No, rather I propose that there is some kind of random reward every few games that you receive, but it isn't like a single drop, it's obviously on some kind of rarity curve. And, well, here are some thoughts I have. You might say that's basically a loot box, but I don't feel like it's so bad to just have this random little drop that could be good. It could be meh, but there's always a reason to play a few games, and every day you have some form of reward structure that you can feel and enjoy without spending money on the game. Who knows, maybe getting coins would incentivize people to spend money on the game anyway. I know this might be a controversial idea, and I fully understand if people don't want to engage with that system, so please don't crucify me for it. To take this to the seasonal scale, it really feels like this part of the game is just not developed enough. I know there's a 2-month content cycle, and there's only so many resources available, but it really feels like somewhere that investment would actually pay off. I firmly believe the season should contain way more story and world building content associated with a map or character released. It gives people a reason to play a new season, and it just gives the game world a bit more life. The character cinematics are really good introductions, but it would be so much better if you actually experienced it in-game instead of just a one-off cutscene and maybe just some random character dialogues during matches. This is where I also have problems with events in Overwatch. Event rewards are generally useless. Some minor battle pass XP, maybe a voice line or spray, maybe once in a blue moon you also get a skin. Meanwhile, it feels like the cash store will be updated every other week. Events should be a really good incentive for people to log back into the game. I know FOMO is a risk, but you could give cosmetics away for free in the events and then just put them in the store later for credits. This doesn't really hurt the bottom line for Blizzard, and it does what events are supposed to do, get people back into the game. And so there we have it. Those are my thoughts on why Overwatch is struggling. The game has a lot going for it, but there's just so much room for Blizzard to improve the overall experience and actually grow the game, instead of just letting it slowly bleed players over time. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. Please leave a like or a dislike, and subscribe if you would like to see more of this content in the future. I would also love to hear your opinions on these topics. As I've said, I'm coming from a fairly casual perspective on these issues, so please drop them in the comments below. My plans moving forward are to spend more time in the competitive playlist. I've played around 10 placement matches on support and I really enjoyed it, so I'll now work on the other roles and begin pushing up the ladder. I'll be streaming this on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/cypherxerox, so please drop in for a chat. Cheers!